let's say these are mixed use properties. So none of these are 100% tillable, but mixed use recreational parcels. So you have 100 of them. We randomly pulled them from the syndication. How many of those, by just a random percentage, would you say would be worth looking at and potentially buying?
Wow, that's a good question. I will tell you this. I very rarely buy farms just because I've made so many mistakes over the years that I know what I'm looking for. And when they pop, I move.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I am on the phone with a real estate agent. I am en route making plans. How fast can I get there? Because I know what I'm looking for. If I'm in the truck going, I've probably already bought it mentally.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just validating what I think should be there. Because I want to be boots on the ground.
Yeah. How often do you go and you're disappointed and you're like, oh, this looks drastically different? I guess there's pictures on the listing, but just I'm picturing someone looking at Google Earth or looking on Onyx.
More often than not, no, I don't. If I'm going in the truck, it's usually because I know what I'm looking at. And I studied it well enough and done my homework and I know the area that I'm going.
So you said you made a bunch of mistakes over the years. What are some of those? Do you have any horror stories or just like, oh my gosh, I will never do that again stories?
I had a piece that was 240 acres and it only had access from the west. And it was very early on in my career. It's what I could afford. And I thought I could make it work. And I bought that farm. I think Derek was 3. Put it this way. He helped me do food plot samplings and he was shorter than the 5-gallon bucket. I'll tell you that.
Okay.
So he was probably 2 or 3 years old. I thought I could basically change it because the guy I bought it from was a whitetail guy, but he really wasn't a habitat guy. And I'm like, God, there's just so much potential here. But the problem, and that's where I learned this from, was the best bedding I had was in the back. And it was hard for me to get in and out of there without blowing it up. And the only way I could do there is go in there an hour before dark and stay an hour after dark. But I knew I could hear him leaving every time I exited. So I said, when you went back there, if you went back, there's an all day sit. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. You were going to go for the day. So I realized then that that's not something you can sustain and do that all the time. And so that's what cut my teeth on saying access is by far the number one thing, because I only had access from the west.
This was a question I wanted to ask you earlier too. So when you're looking to underwrite a deal that you may purchase, it sounds like the income is pretty important in terms of.
Well, what I always try to do is I always make sure that farm, if it doesn't have it, can I create it? Can I create enough income to offset the taxes, pay for my food plots, and give me a little bit coin in there to do land improvements? Because if you go after a whitetail property, a true whitetail property, recreational property, you're going to have to let a lot of income go. If you have a huge income farm, it's not going to be a good rec farm. You can't have both. It just doesn't exist. Well, more often than not, it doesn't exist. So you got to chase one or the other. But if you go after, a really good rec farm, you can create some tillable and so forth. You got to know your soils and where you can put some stuff in, but I always make sure it pays for itself, because I always said, once this farm is paid off, I don't want to have to pay for it every year to go use it.
That's good. Yeah, that's good.
I want to make sure it's self-sustainable.
I mean, that makes perfect sense. Like, do all the farms that you purchase, have they followed that rule, or has there ever been one that's like, okay, so that's a hard rule?
They all follow that rule.
Okay.
Yep. They all make enough that I can, once the note's paid for, that they will hold their own.
Okay.
Food plot expenses and taxes and some, land improvements. I'm not talking about a lot, but enough that if I didn't want to do anything that year and just do food plots and pay taxes, I'm not dipping it in my pocket.
That's a great piece of advice. I hope you guys enjoyed this. My name is Jake Hofer, and I'm a real estate agent out of the state of Illinois, and it's my goal to help 100 people buy their first farm. Been doing that with the Land Podcast and clips like this every single Thursday and Saturday that are released here on the channel. And to be one of those 100 people, all you have to do is, if you're in the state of Illinois and I can help you, I'd be happy to do so. Number 2, if you want to get connected with someone that can help you, reach out and I'll be happy to get you in contact with an agent that I would personally do business with. And the last one is, if you just simply learn something from the content we're putting out, or you get inspired to take action, I want to know, get you out of that spreadsheet. I'm on a mission to help 100 people. Until next time, see ya.